Commissioner Maynard, Commissioner Barons,
Here.
Commissioner Alden,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Murphy,
Here.
Commissioner Duncan, Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
And stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This brings us to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the review and approval of the prior meeting minutes from the September 10th meeting. Do we have any comments or anything that needs to be stated about the prior meeting minutes, or do we have a motion for approval?
Make a motion to accept the September 10th meeting notes.
You have a second? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? All right, so this passes. Number 4 brings us to the action agenda for the meeting. Number 5 is the public hearing on the adult daycare. This was the amended ordinance proposal to allow adult daycare. And the public hearing is now open for discussion. So if anybody has anything they'd like to bring forward or state about adult daycare ordinance, and please come up to the mic and state your name and where you live. Do we have anybody to takers on that? All right. Then I will close the public hearing side of the adult daycares, bring this back to council. And do we have any discussions or anything concerns on the adult daycare ordinance proposal? It is open for discussion. Nothing?
I don't have anything.
All right. Then, what's our recommendation? To move forward with the amended 31, it's code section 31.1. Is that what it is? So we have a recommendation then on the definition, thank you. The zoning that would be allowed in R3 and B1. Yes. I'm just looking that over. So, sorry. So do we have a recommendation from the council to accept, I guess, the definition and the code change? To add this to the zoning ordinance.
Recommend it be added to the zoning ordinance, right?
So we have a recommendation to add to the zoning ordinance for R3 and B1 and for the definition of adult daycare for the city of Centralia. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. This concludes the adult daycare portion of the agenda. This brings us to public hearing number 2, which is the voluntary annexation of existing property by Triple B Timber LLC. So the public hearing is open. So if you have something to discuss, bring forward on the annexation, then please step up to the mic, state your name and your address.
Yes, Keenan Simon. I'm the civil engineer representing the client. I just I'm here if you have any questions, comments, or concern that I can try to address. The owner's here and present as well. So essentially, what we're looking at is a parcel of ground. We required some easement access to have access to public sewer and water, and the property lies in front of development intent at this time, but he does know that he's got to annex to the city in order to develop and have access to public utilities, and this is the first step. So,
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Where do you intend to access over to the Jason Street that's in the city right now? It's my recollection that the highway department acquired right of access to the highway when they designed that highway.
yeah, I believe currently now there's 2 access points that are on his property that have a frontage to 3 access points that are identified driveways that access the highway as it sits now.
But we got address zoning separately. Well, I'm
Sydney, does the zoning have to be addressed separately?
In the application, yeah, because there are 2 different things. You have an annexation request, voluntary petition, but then yes, the zoning should be considered separately because they're not combined under the statute.
No, I think both of them are on the docket for tonight, correct?
Oh, yeah. So we'll address them both tonight separate. And we sent letters out to, Ameren has an easement through the area for electric. We sent letters out to them. They have responded. That letter is in the packet. And then we heard from Public Water District 10 today. I do have that letter. Their meeting to address this is tomorrow evening, so they did not have a response for us today. But they are stating that it looks like this is in their service area, so we're going to wait and see what their response is. They're supposed to get it back to us, I believe, tomorrow or the next day, so we know what their response is for the water, if they're gonna want to service that area or not.
Yeah, so it's a little tricky because of that parcel. It's split where that city limits line is. So the city limits line in the territory agreement, obviously Torchtown indicates that that's obviously city territory for water rights. But this side closer to the highway, we did go over documents with them. And it does look like that document shows that is technically legally in their territory from what we're seeing. So like Tara said, they're going to meet with their board and see what they may need for those rights, if that's something we want to move forward with, and kind of give us an idea of what their board wants to do. So,
Associated with acquiring those rights.
right. So just a little bit of a different scenario with that line being right there. So.
Gotcha.
And sewer.
Yeah, so obviously with it being out in the territory of Boone County Sewer, we sent them letters, and I don't know that we've received anything back from them. I know we had a meeting here recently with them, and they understand that they don't have anything to service up here either this far, so it usually is a pretty easy conversation with them for connecting to our sewer our service sewer. So.
Yeah, they'll probably default to the public
Yeah.
utility that is nearest, which is the city sewer, which we have access to.
You're real close. You're about 200 feet away from the sewer main that goes underneath.
Yeah, we
124th.
require an easement from the neighbor to the south. We've also had confirmation from MoDOT that they would allow us to install that in the right of way if
Good.
need be. So we've got that covered as far as all the public utilities to do anything there as well. So.
Any other questions for the public hearing side of this? On the, just have to open this twice, once for the annexation and then for the zoning. Can we break that apart, or can we do a public hearing? Sydney, questions? Sydney, do we have to have 2 separate public hearings? Like, do we have to open it and close it twice, once for annex? Okay, no. Okay.
No, but you do need to have two separate motions. One to approve the voluntary petition just to annex on the land, and then there should be a second motion passed with a recommendation for the proposed zoning.
Okay. So while we have the public hearing open, concerning the city zoning requested B2 is what's requested?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Do we want to have discussion on the zoning? Questions on the zoning?
The petition that he, I presume he prepared and presented to the city in October, requests the property be zoned residential. And then later on there's an additional document, I believe, that says they're requesting B1.
Yeah, the surveyor completed the annexation request document, so my understanding is it's presented as B2.
B1 allows for a heck of a lot of different things like service stations and fast food
Yep, I
restaurants.
think it complies kind of with your zoning category for direct highway frontage.
Yeah, but it's in an area that is not projected in the comprehensive plan for business or highway business.
Do you happen to have the definition of B1
It's
zoning category, like the?
B1 is downtown
Oh,
commercial.
I'm sorry, B2. I apologize. You had me confused there. You're calling B1, so I started calling B1.
Isn't it B1? in your
B2.
second?
It's B2's the request. And we
Okay.
do have that corner down on 124, that triangle, that's B1.
Well, it shows that on the 2014 map, but on the 2018 map, it shows it as other, as R1.
The 2018 map has some issues. I'm working with Midmo Regional to get that corrected.
I think there's a B2 property also, on further south of that corner. There's also highway frontage.
So
Right there at the intersection where those two blacktops, just to the east.
this triangle right
Yeah.
here is
And
B1.
also,
Everything west of the creek there. Creek became the property, the lot line.
The line, yeah. So it's B1, this is all R1, I believe. And then this up here would be being requested B2. Any other questions concerning the B2 request? What about from the public side? Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. So, thank you. Thank you for your time on it.
I'm gonna close the public hearing side of this one, and I'll bring it back for recommendations. Let's address the annexation first. So do we have a recommendation on the voluntary annexation of this property to the city, or to the city? To the city.
I'll make a motion to accept the application for voluntary annexation into the city.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that motion?
Yes?
All those in favor of recommending the voluntary annexation? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passes the annexation part of this. So concerning the B2 requested zoning, do we have any recommendation on the requested zoning of B2?
I recommend that we not approve recommending B2 zoning as requested. I think the character and the likely development would be residential of some nature. It's, the comprehensive plan specifies single family, but I don't see a problem with multifamily being in there. It's just that service stations and fast food restaurants and banks and all that are not in keeping with the property that's already along Halliburton.
So wait a second, the attorney was struggling to hear. We cannot have motions in the negative, so you can't make a motion not to accept B2. You just would not have a motion at all, and that issue would just die for lack of a second or even lack of a first. And you can request other things like providing more information from the developer on his intended use, but we can't have negative motions.
Okay,
So, either
somebody else.
somebody makes a recommendation either to approve it or they don't, or it dies because nobody gets it on the floor and gets it seconded and voted.
Let me ask it again. So do we have a recommendation to approve or to move forward on the B2 zoning? Okay, so we have no recommendation on the zoning. With that, do we move this to a different time, like request more information concerning the development, intended use, and then take it up at a different time?
Well, you can't get too technical about the specification of the intended use. You have to stay within the generic zoning categories as allowed. So it depends on whether he has an intent
It can be annexed if it's not zoned.
is close enough to some other zoning district designation in order to achieve maybe what he wants.
So, Sydney, can it be annexed? Can it be annexed without the zoning, without the
Yeah.
zoning change?
Yeah, that's correct. So it'll be annexed in with whatever designation the county currently has it zoned at. I don't recall what the parcel is currently zoned at Boone County, but it will come into the city at that zoning designation.
RS at Boone County. It's residential. I don't know what RS, if that's single family or what that is. I'll have to look that up. Okay, so the current zoning for Boone County is RS, which we get more information on.
Well, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
It's annexed in.
Okay, so I don't think I've ever ran into this in all my years, but we have no recommendation. So it's just gonna, we're not gonna
Just
make
be
a
honest.
recommendation on the zoning tonight. The recommendation to move forward with the annexation is passed, and it would come in as RS under Boone County, and then it would be a rezoning request later. Should we do it or choose to? You have to do a rezoning request later.
So we would go to the board, the commission for, they could approve what the zoning is.
So, I'm gonna have to, Sydney, when this goes for a public hearing in front of the Board of Aldermen without a recommendation from planning and zoning, are they
They can still vote on it.
are they still gonna be able to vote on the zoning, or how does?
No, the answer is that, I mean, at this point in time, because the city, under its processes, we combined the annexation with a zoning request, which is not a requirement under statute. So in this case, if planning and zoning does not approve a change in the zoning from RS, which is the Boone County designation, then when it goes in front of the Board of Aldermen, all they will have to consider is the voluntary annexation petition, not the request for rezoning. It will come in as RS, which is what you're the close equivalent to what Centralia has to Boone County's RS designation. And then in the future, if the developer would like to change that zoning designation, there will have to be an application to change the zoning, a new public hearing, and a new process in order to change that designation.
And that does go in front of planning and zoning, yeah, for rezoning application.
So Sydney, can you hear me? So Sydney, can we request that they make, we want them to vote on this, whether it's yes or no, for the, I guess, the business designation.
Okay, I hate to say this, you really cut out. Is it possible to have Tara ask me the question? She seems to be very clear. Sorry.
Sorry.
We ask the board to vote on this, regardless if it's yes or no. We don't, we want the vote to be brought public.
The commission?
No, probably with the commission, but also with the planning. We want to see what the recommendation is. We don't want the motion not to have any action.
Well, it has action by not taking any action because we're not proposing to be changed from this designation as it says today. Is that correct?
Right, correct. You guys have actually already voted to recommend the voluntary annexation, which means it will come in as it is currently zoned in Boone County. No other further action at this time needs to be taken on the zoning. It will come in with that. Only in the future, if the developer wants to change the designation, they will have to come back in for a rezoning request, which will trigger the whole process we have under the ordinance for a rezoning request. Am I making this sense?
All right, no, that makes sense. So then, I guess the last question I have related to that, is there any sort of timeline that he has to wait before he can apply for a new zoning category? Okay, I just want to make sure that.
No.
Okay.
Just we've got to get the proper public notice and the next time you guys meet. So, and I would say at this point, just, having a more clear understanding though of what the developer's intention is so that the Planning and Zoning Commission, you folks have a better, ability to guide the Board of Aldermen in the future would be highly recommended.
Okay. So I think this concludes,
Six is completed? That was the seven.
concludes 6. Moving to, number 7, which is the Mayberry subdivision street width reduction request, and this is the reduction request for Andy, is it Drive? Andy Drive in the Mayberry subdivision. So the public hearing is open. If you'd like to come forward on the Mayberry subdivision request, again, state your name, address. Mr. Bacanazzi.
Yeah. Keenan Simon, I'm with Simon Trump Engineering, 1516 Business of WS. I'm here on behalf of the client. Obviously, I provided a narrative with this that kind of gave a broad scope of what we got going on with the development. Essentially, from the third-party traffic study that we completed, they provided some recommendations for some street widths based off of some safety standards, and then they also with the traffic study identified our vehicles per day, the amount of traffic that's coming through the subdivision. One of the things that was brought up within that study by the professional identified the fact that the street widths seem to be quite wide based off of what they see in a lot of the other residential districts, such as at City Columbia. That's just one example there. With this proposed development, we're providing some additional parking off-street than the minimum that's required. With the driveways that we have that accesses the multifamily residential structures, it really limits someone from even being able to park on the street. So what we don't want to do going into this development is provide essentially a 38-foot wide street that is going to promote speeding and create an unsafe condition for the residents that are using this district. So with this tonight, I know that we provided some displays that represent providing a taper once that collector street is beyond the commercial district that has the frontage of Highway 22, and tapering that down to a 32-foot wide street that better fits and suits the safety parameters of the subdivision and the residents that will be using it. So with that tonight, I'm here if you have any questions and I can kind of go over it. There's a lot of information there, so if there's anything you want me to talk through specifically, I can kind of touch base on that. But if you've read through the traffic study and or the street width reduction that I presented in the packet with you as well, it really kind of covers all the bases. Not only does it help with the city not maintaining a large width of pavement, that 38-foot street, there's not a street that is that wide, I believe, here in Centralia as it sits. I think Highway 22 is at 28 feet for a majority, and it carries tenfold the amount of traffic that this collector will as well. So with that, we hope that you guys will fall on the recommendation of the professional traffic engineer that identified this in the study, and hopefully this kind of all makes sense. And if you have any questions, I'll get them.
Do
Do we have anybody else that has anything to add, comments on the request? If you do, please come forward.
I would just point out that Hunter's Ridge subdivision is a duplex subdivision with 32-foot streets. And it's about impossible to get vehicles in there of any size at many times of the day because of the vehicles parked along the street. I think this is a bad idea. I think it should remain a 38-foot street. The other question I would have is, has anybody talked to MoDOT about traffic out there? MoDOT
Yes.
has traffic.
MoDOT has been involved in the traffic.
They were included in the traffic study.
Okay. Because they might have something to say about turn lanes and stuff.
They did.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else on the public side? Any questions here?
What are the street widths out at the old behind the intermediate school?
Those are all just residential, nothing this wide. I think the Columbia Street is the only street that fits this category. Yeah.
Fits the category here.
That's connecting Gano, JJ, that highway into Pat CIS. It's really the only road.
So that frontage road out there is the one that really applies to
Mm-hmm.
talking about here today.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that. I thought so. We'll make sure.
I'm going to close the public hearing side of this and then bring it back to the commission for discussion.
The city attorney has a quick question for the developer. Based on the density of the houses in Mayberry or the proposed Mayberry subdivision, how many parking spaces in the plan are you allotting for per unit? And the reason I'm asking this is I did see a drawing, and it appeared, at least in the drawing, and I know drawings are a little, they're a drawing, that it appeared that some of the cars might be encroaching upon the proposed sidewalk portion of the subdivision. So can you kind of speak to the parking that you have designated per unit? And if you were to narrow the street, are you still going to have enough parking per unit, or will people still need to park on the road?
Yeah, no. With the larger right-of-way width, we have obviously extra frontage from the back and curb to the house. On top of that, the city requirements is 2 parking stalls per unit. We're providing 3 full-size vehicles. The intent of development, after talking with the city, is to do a sidewalk at back and curb that increases the length of driveway so that we don't encroach into that sidewalk that would be at the back of the street. So we have planned for that, and we do have the room to, account for 3 vehicles, kind of 2 in line and then 1 off to the side, if that kind of makes sense. And we'd have additional room for the frontage of Andy Drive, which has a 66-foot wide right-of-way. So that right-of-way line represents the property line where the setback would start. So technically, these structures are going to be further away from the street on Andy Drive as well. Approximately another 6 feet or more, if that makes sense.
At the 32-foot.
Correct. But if you get what I'm saying, the right-of-way width is wider through Andy Drive, so the setback for the front of the building's further. So there's more pavement till you get to the sidewalk that would be at the back of the curb. Does that make sense? So there's even more additional room for the main collector corridor that's identified as Andy Drive.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes.
Why is there a 66-foot right-of-way?
Because we are identifying that as a future collector.
That's only a 60-foot right-of-way.
Okay, 60-foot right away. I'm sorry, I didn't mean 60. I wasn't sure what standard we had here. So 60 foot. So we have 10 foot, so it'll be 5 foot additional width, not 6 foot additional width. Sorry.
Well, I'm gonna ask a follow-up question because I didn't hear the answer to it, and I know I mean, I asked a compound question, but do you anticipate residents still needing to park on the street, even with the parking designations that you've got set aside already? I mean, are you still considering that there might be on-street parking by the residents? That's what I'm still wanting to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very limited because of the way that the driveways are going to stack. It's going to be almost, there's pretty much only going to be an opportunity to park a car on the street between lot lines, between structures. And even at those locations, it's going to be a little bit difficult because a lot of those are low points for drainage that have storm structures, so not the most ideal situation to get out of your vehicle and park on the street. So yeah, there is going to be very limited area that's going to be able to be parked on. That's why we decided to provide additional parking on site above and beyond the minimum of what's required with on-site parking.
But there will be parking on the street.
Unless you guys don't want it on there, we can put up signs. But I would suspect you can still get in some overflow parking, so the intent would be to use it. The streets are quite a bit wider than what's needed to provide on-street parking, so I would still allow it.
Any other questions at this point so we can discuss it? Sydney, you good? Thank you.
Lynn, did you have a question?
I had the same comment that Sydney did about the parking across the sidewalk, because we have enough problem in town on that already, even on Jefferson Street.
So
if you're handicapped, you be really sensible about that.
to answer the question, this question I would pose to you with that in mind, when we asked about whether you would be intersecting the sidewalk, and you said that the sidewalk would move to the curb, which puts the person walking closer to the street, which could be potentially safety issues depending, right? So I can walk easily off the regular sidewalk over 4 feet and be in the road and get hit, but that, I'm not the normal person. But so my point is, with the 32-foot wide variance, if it was allowed, where would the parking be as far as in relationship to the sidewalk? Would the sidewalk be impeded?
No, I mean, no, the intent is not to impede the sidewalk, but we can't, that's where you guys need to enforce, your rules if someone is parking on the sidewalk.
If they don't have enough room to park a regular vehicle, and that regular vehicle is gonna stick into a normal regular vehicle, I'm not talking about a long bed 4-door truck, I'm talking about a regular vehicle. My point is, say it's you could have a 13-foot vehicle, 12, 13-foot vehicle, right? My point is, are we going to be impeding into that right of way of the pedestrian walking?
So just so you guys have a kind of an idea, North Point subdivision is back of curb sidewalks. So what they're describing right now is identical to what is just installed out there.
Right.
So that would be a good comparison. If anybody has questions, wants to see what it looks like. The parking is not the same, obviously, with what they're trying to install, but the subdivision itself, the back of curb, the road width is what he is talking about. That would be a picture for you guys to go out there and look at and see what it looks like.
And as far as what you stated earlier, I think I heard you say it was the 3 on-site parking was based off of standard vehicles, a standard size.
Yeah, let's just roll with it this way. So from the center line of the roadway, we have a 16-foot wide street, then we have a 5-foot wide sidewalk, right? So that puts us at 21 feet. We have 9 feet to the property line, and we have a 25-foot setback, right? So 25-foot setback, 9 feet. So the distance from the sidewalk to the face of the garage is going to be 34 feet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
This is with a 32-foot.
32-foot street.
That's the 32-foot street.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, yes.
So I can't speak to the distance that Darren did out here at North Point, but we have the approach off the street on the Moberly subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the approach, which is approximately a 3-foot, if I remember right, a 4-foot, and then the sidewalk, and then we have an 18 by 18 square for parking. full-size diesel crew cab long bed can park on the house side of the sidewalk, and there's an additional 4-foot loss that's not gonna be here from the difference between putting the sidewalk at the back of the curb versus at the end of the approach. So, that extra
So you
6
gain another
We
6
gain
foot
s-
of length on top of that.
Yeah, and,
so-
and these numbers are based upon 32-foot street.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
What was that distance again? You said 27 foot? Length of that?
Should be 30.
So it's a 32-foot wide street,
Right.
and so that's a 16-foot lane, and then you have a 5-foot sidewalk, so that puts you at 21 foot to the back edge of the sidewalk from the center line of the street. And then your right-of-way width is 30 foot on Andy Drive, so then you have 9 foot to the property line, and then you have 25 foot to the front setback of the building. So that puts you at 34 feet
34.
from the edge of the sidewalk to the front of the building. Yeah, I think I believe, and I apologize, I don't have the parking display here. I think we were planning on setting the building back another foot or two to even give ourselves a little bit more room. I think on the residential streets like Opie Lane that you have there.
So the head to tail two car section should be 24 foot with a non-counted taper to the other spot for your 3-car park.
Right.
So.
And then the problem begins when we start to try to double park in there behind one another, when you're out the road. And we have to,
Puzzles.
yeah, puzzles, sure. I mean, people use it and we have to enforce it. Put 'em on the side.
Are you still intending that these be gravel driveways and parking area rather than paved?
It's never been gravel ever.
How's that? Is that even allowed? How would someone be
yes,
allowed to
it-
have a gravel driveway
I
on a
don't-
gravel road? Yeah, so that's interesting. I didn't realize you could even do that here.
It was mentioned at one of the first meetings, and I got the impression that they were intending to have the parking.
I think that was just a scare tactic that people have used in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a way to demark what's.
Yeah, I didn't see
As I
that.
read this, you're going to be using what the section we wrote about 5 years ago about attached single-family buildings. It's sort of in an R3, but there's those additional qualifications that can easily be addressed at this time. And so, are you intending to own these as buildings or as individual houses in perpetuity?
The intent is that each multi-family structure is on its own individual lot. It's not actually sold as they can't own the house. They're intended to be a rental that
They're rental units.
Adair is going to manage.
Okay, but
Yeah. I guess I'm not trying to.
No,
I'm
I'm just
draw us back
wondering-
again. What we have in front of you tonight is a request for the street reduction going into the residential district, maintaining that 38-foot wide through the commercial and the frontage of Highway 22. So I'm just trying to circle us back around to what we're really looking at and what the request is and the intent and what we're trying to meet here and how we're going above and beyond the parking and how we're trying to create a safe condition where we don't have big, wide, open freeways through the middle of a residential district where, kids are going to be playing and, when you have that much space between you and the road, you tend not to pay attention as much. And those are all kind of the facts that were broken down in the traffic study with the discrepancies of what they saw and having a little bit too wide of a street standard here. And this was kind of what dictated this is moving forward is the traffic engineer essentially pulled us aside and said, hey, I see this potentially being a big issue for you guys and being a safety factor, and you should look at addressing this, and that's why we're here tonight. Yeah.
I understand. The design on that sort of bubble parking area is unusual. I've never seen it used before. Are you aware of any examples in your life?
What was your question? I didn't.
The parking.
Oh, back on the parking again?
Have you seen any of that in real life, the way that you guys have it designed?
Yeah.
House I lived at Maynard Drive has it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the house I moved from Mexico
We
had
parked
it.
3 people all the
I've
time.
built it and done it probably 30 times on houses in Mexico. Speaking from experience, since we've kind of opened the discussion, out of the 50 units that's been built in the last 2 years on the Motorlead subdivision, in a larger town, larger pool of people, exact same amount of bedrooms and bathrooms, exact same amount of square foot, there's 2 units out of 50 doors that have 3 cars. The rest of them have 1 or 2.
Do have a comment more related to traffic flow. You show the on-street parking and going back on Opie Lane for a while, I think it's doable, but I would recommend that the city put no parking from here to corner after the east side of lot 101 and lot 115, so you got better line of sight. And from experience on Emerald Drive, I know that people park in some cases opposite one another, and you can't even see or get positioned to make the corner onto Jefferson.
The biggest portion of the reason why we agreed to do the 3-car parking per door on the development is to allow, if you all wanted no parking on either side of the street for the whole subdivision, I'm okay with that. It's not going to be required.
It's a for discussion between you and the staff, and
If they want to make those recommendations, sure, we'll be glad to do
sure.
it.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be a city street, so if they want to give it a try and it doesn't work out, they can always throw up the no parking signs because we have provided the additional parking that's above and beyond the minimum standard. You know, I'm assuming those duplexes probably don't have 3 parking stalls.
They have 1, that's the problem.
Okay. I think that's where a lot of the issues have been generated down the road. Just saying, pointing out the obvious, you know.
I'm just thinking, with attached buildings, it's possible to sell them off individually, if not under your existing request. If future owner comes back and wants to do that, it's possible under our regulations.
Okay. And they could reevaluate that if that's something that they want to do, but at this time, I think with his business model and where he's moving forward, that's
That's the intent of today.
Yeah, that's
Lynn, are
okay.
you talking about the 0 lot lines?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that that applies on this build out. I know that I'm not an engineer by any means about the firewall and all of that, but I know that there were separate regulations with the 0 lot lines.
Yeah.
And this isn't being zoned for that.
When they describe it as attached single family, that's the way I interpret it. Are you?
No, you're right. It could be done that way if they wanted to. I don't know if that's the intent.
Is it your intent, by the way, to do the lots on Opie and whatever the other street is? Basically,
I guess I would cycle this back to, I think we're going down a building design discussion as opposed to the street width discussion. So I think we need to cycle back to, are we okay with reducing the street width or are we not? Because if we're talking about 0 lot lines and firewalls, and that's a building design component of the project, not a street width piece.
Yeah, okay. I understand. I agree.
It has a bearing on parking on the street and accessibility, but I won't.
I have a question on the street. When you did the MoDOT study, are they going to require the traffic study? Is MoDOT going to require?
Yeah, they were incorporated in the traffic study.
Were they going to require a
recommendations.
turning lane?
It did
off
not
22?
trigger improvements off 22.
I just try to avoid that intersection every time I come up by McDonald's.
Yep.
I believe
The
I believe that intersection is being looked at in June.
I was gonna say my understanding is I think it's gonna be a roundabout.
Hey, don't start any fires now.
Sorry.
Come on now.
So what are
you doing? Way to deter the heat here, Dean. I appreciate
Maybe
that.
MoDOT learned from the experience.
So no turning lane.
It didn't trigger anything.
When the city improved to the north part of Jefferson, right adjacent to that intersection, ODOT was involved and they didn't have comments about the location of the entrances and exits to Highway 22 from McDonald's, so that this sort of created part of the problem as it is. I would recommend, well, you're staying by the existing right-of-way requirements, 60 feet on.
He's talking about easements. The right way.
The right of way width,
The right
we're
of way.
maintaining the 60-foot width.
Yeah.
We're not requiring.
That's separate from the pavement requirement.
Yeah, we're not asking for a reduction in the right of way width or anything of that nature.
So 60 foot would allow for some redesign for turn lanes if and when it proves in existence.
Or whatever the state deems for that intersection to do with it, whatever that looks like.
Right.
Whether it's round, whether it's
And they
square.
might be reluctant to grant another entrance to the west of this proposed street.
So he is proposing to leave it 38 feet coming off of Highway 22, and the taper would happen where it enters the residential driveway, or the residential neighborhood, so that where it curves in, they would put an entrance so that the properties to the west, if they wanted to join in.
Yeah, they would have right of way access to put in a street onto that street off Andy Drive, the one that is headed to 22. Either neighbor to the east or west has any right to tie to that street. And most likely MoDOT would require them to tie to that street. They would not allow them to have another entrance. You are correct.
Any other questions? So for clarity, this is concerning the reduction of the width of Andy, I've already changed it, right? Andy Drive, and only as it enters into the residential area, not in the commercial area, which will stay 38 feet. So with that, I'm asking, do we have a recommendation on the request for the reduction of Andy Drive to 32 feet?
And by the way, I don't remember you, this is a request for a variance, right? We have a written ordinance that says 38 feet, so the commission needs to focus specifically on the developer's evidence of safety. So that is basically the only thing I have heard thus far legally that would allow the commission to advance a recommendation in this variance is if they find that there is sufficient safety requirements that have been met to allow the reduction from the ordinance.
Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that clarity on this, do we have anything to discuss on the safety concerns?
It's
Regarding
mentioned
the
in the
variance.
study. ODOT concluded that it's safer if it's narrower because they'll drive slower.
Yep.
Not people I know, but MoDOT believes it.
It actually lends itself to safety in positive or negative. Is that right?
We have the write-up on that. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay, so I'll ask, do we have a recommendation on the variance request as presented, knowing that with the study that has been brought forward, that it could address safety concerns by narrowing it to 32 feet?
And I should point out that the way I read the zoning, subdivision code, we are the final decider on that. It doesn't have to go to Board of Adjustment or the Board of Aldermen.
So this is the
It's
one
just an
that,
instruction to the staff to require that in the improvement plans.
okay. So do we have a recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as presented with the documentation based on traffic and safety.
Thank you,
I'll
Ryan.
second.
You second? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Do we have any nays? All right. As that is, then it's passed for the variance request. So that brings us to adjournment. So that concluded the last item on the agenda. So with that, second on the adjournment. We need a second on the adjournment. All those in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?